Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudiraye. Today we're reading from Srimad Bhagavatam, Canto 7, Chapter 9. Prahlad pacifies Lord Nrsingadev with prayers. And today's verse is 44. Prayena deva munayak svavimukti kama. Maunam charanti vijanena parartha nishta. Naitan vihaya kripanan vivamukshe eko. Nanyam tvarasya sharanam brahmato nupashye. Prayena deva munaya svavimukti kama. Maunam charanti vijanena parartha nishta. Naitan vihaya kripanan vimukshe eko. Nanyam tvadasya sharanam brahmato nupasye. Prayena. Generally, in most cases, Deva, O my Lord, Munaya, the great saintly persons, Swa, personal, own, Vimukti kama, ambitious for liberation from this material world. Maunam, silently. Charanti, they wander. In places that, like the Himalaya forests, where they have no touch with the activities of the materialists. Vijane, in solitary places. Not. Pararthanishta, interested in working for others by giving them the benefit of the Krishna consciousness movement, by enlightening them with Krishna consciousness. Not. Etan, these. Vihaya, leaving aside. Kripanan, fools and rascals. Engaged in materialistic activity, who do not know the benefit of the human form of life. Vivamukshe, I desire to be liberated and return home, back to Godhead. Eka, alone. Not. Anyam, other. Twat, but for you. Asya, of this. Sharanam, shelter. Brahmataha, of the living entity, rotating and wandering throughout the material universes. Anupashye, do I see. My dear Lord Nrsingadev, I see that there are many saintly persons indeed, but they are interested only in their own deliverance. Not caring for the big cities and towns, they go to the Himalaya or the forest to meditate with vows of silence, mauna vrata. They are not interested in delivering others. As for me, however, I do not wish to be liberated alone, leaving aside all these poor fools and rascals. I know that without Krishna consciousness, without taking shelter of your lotus feet, one cannot be happy. Therefore, I wish to bring them back to the shelter of your lotus feet. This is the decision of the Vaishnava, the pure devotee of the Lord. For himself, he has no problems, even if he has to stay in this material world, because his only business is to remain in Krishna consciousness. The Krishna conscious person can go even to hell and still be happy. Therefore, Prahlad Maharaj said, Naivod Vijay para duratya vaitaranya. O best of the great personalities, I'm not at all afraid of material existence. The pure devotee is never unhappy in any condition of life. This is confirmed in Srimad Bhagavatam 6:17-28. Narayanat parak sarve nakutaśchana pibhyati swarga parvarga narakeshu apitulyartha darshina. Devotees solely engaged in the transcendental devotional service of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Narayan, never fear any condition of life. For them, the heavenly planets, liberation, and the hellish planets are all the same. For such devotees are interested only in the service of the Lord. For a devotee, being situated in the heavenly planets and being in the hellish planets are equal. For a devotee lives neither in heaven nor in hell, but with Krishna in the spiritual world. The secret of success for the devotee is not understood by the karmis and jnanis. Karmis therefore try to be happy by material adjustment, and jnanis want to be happy by becoming one with the Supreme. The devotee has no such interest. He is not interested in so-called meditation in Himalaya or the forest. Rather, his interest is in the busiest part of the world, where he teaches people Krishna consciousness. The Krishna consciousness movement was started for this purpose. We do not teach one to meditate in a secluded place just so that one may show that he has become very much advanced and may be proud of his so-called transcendental meditation, although he engages in all sorts of foolish materialistic activity. A Vaishnava like Prahlad Maharaj is not interested in such a bluff of spiritual advancement. Rather, he is interested in enlightening people in Krishna consciousness, because that is the only way for them to become happy. Prahlad Maharaj says clearly, Nanyam twadasya shararam brahmato nupashye. I know that without Krishna consciousness, without taking shelter of your lotus feet, one cannot be happy. One wanders within the universe, life after life, but by the grace of a devotee, a servant of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, one can get the clue to Krishna consciousness, and then not only become happy in this world, but also return home back to Godhead. That is the real target in life. The members of the Krishna consciousness movement are not at all interested in so-called meditation in the Himalayas or the forest, where one will make only a show of meditation, nor are they interested in opening many schools for yoga and meditation in the cities. Rather, every member of the Krishna consciousness movement is interested in going door to door to try to convince people about the teachings of Bhagavad Gita as it is, the teachings of Lord Chaitanya. That is the purpose of the Hare Krishna movement. The members of the Krishna consciousness movement must be fully convinced that without Krishna, one cannot be happy. Thus, the Krishna conscious person avoids all kinds of pseudo-spiritualists, transcendentalists, meditators, monists, philosophers, and philanthropists. Om Jnanatimidandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadahmayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Sri Guru Sri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Sadvatutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Sri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindho Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrinādvaneshwari Vrishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamani Hari Priye Vansha Kolpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Bhavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jaya Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Shivasari Gaura Bhakta Vrinda Hare Krishna Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare Go Premanande Hari Om. It's a great pleasure and an honor to be in your association, and thank you very much for the opportunity to have this discussion this morning. Srimad Bhagavatam. And just before I left ISKCON of Silicon Valley, a couple of devotees, young devotees, young means they're just freshmen in college, and they had been out on the UC Berkeley campus distributing books from a table. I saw pictures because there's a way in which everyone likes to make sure that everyone can see what's happening so they can stay enlivened on the WhatsApp group. Many of you have this system, so when devotees are out on Sankirtan, you see them distributing. Well, they stopped by my house on the way to the airport because some of them were leaving from a weekend of festivities, and one of the most precious gifts they brought me was a mechanical pencil and a pen, and it was a ballpoint pen. Neither of them I could sell for very much on eBay, but to me they were invaluable because they said to me, and they had a fruitful day in that they met many people, students on the campus who were eager to speak to them. Many of them came over to their table to discuss what types of books they were distributing. And two of them, one who was the possessor of a mechanical pencil, perhaps some kind of technical work, didn't have any other donation, so he gave that. And the other one gave a pen, a ballpoint pen. And these young devotees brought them to me. That's not the only reason they came to my house, but before they left, they said, would you be able to use these? And I said, very much so. There's a tradition of devotees, Vaishnavas, going out into the world to interact with people, to give those who are wandering, as Prabhupada writes, sometimes he says loitering. There's a sign up at every 7-Eleven in the world that says no loitering. Which means, can you think of anything more low class than hanging out outside a 7-Eleven? Prabhupada indirectly equates that to hanging around the material world, which is, loitering means hanging around for no good reason. That those who are in the material world, although they may have mechanical pencils and pens and they may be engaged in writing highfalutin philosophical points or scientific points and so forth, still they come under the category of those who are wandering in the material world without a clear idea how they got here or where they're going. And the devotees are very happy to offer them an opportunity to take the direct words of Krishna from the Bhagavad Gita, which Prabhupada calls the Vedic intelligence, or the Śrīmad Bhagavatam and all the other literatures they make available. And if people can't give something, then if they can just give a smile or an appreciation, that's fine. One of the ways in which we are greatly benefited as a movement by going out into the world and meeting people, befriending them, giving them an opportunity to take away literature and then to come into the association of devotees, is that we test our own mantras. In days of yore, as our dear godbrother Ruchi used to say to people on Sankirtan, "Sir, in days of yore, when kings were kings," he would present the Bhagavatam in that way. Days of yore. There's a way in which now I started thinking about Ruchi and I interrupted myself. What was I saying? Yes, in days of yore, there's a way in which Prabhupada describes how the Brahmanas, who were engaged in a highly technical activity, this high technology that had ramifications in the lives of people and in the whole universe. That's why in the Ramayana you find that Ramachandra went out and executed somebody who was misusing it, as if, like in the modern day, someone was meddling with nuclear secrets and power. That's how powerful the mantras and the yajnastalis were created according to highly technologically advanced methods to make connection to the higher planets and so forth. And to make sure that that was working well, just like nowadays we have technologists whose job is quality control and there's testers, right? Testing, it's a big thing. Every other devotee I ask, what do you do? And he says, testing, make sure it works. There's not information leaking out because the size is wrong or something like that. And we want to see, does it work? And they used to actually sacrifice an animal. And then the animal, by their mantras, would be revived and come back with a new life. And today, of course, as Chaitanya Mahaprabhu presented after meeting his spiritual master, Śrīla Īśopaniṣad, we only have one mantra, that is Hare Nāma, Hare Nāma, Hare Nāma Kevalam, Kalau Nasteva, 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 Gatiranyata. Sometimes we test it on ourselves, in fact daily, hopefully we do. We're not sure if it works or not sometimes. It's a common complaint. I'm chanting, I don't know if I'm making any progress. Therefore we have to test our mantra. And one of the best ways to test it is take it out for a spin in the material world. When we have a Harinam Sankirtan, for instance, we can observe from the various countenances of people who walk by and hear the holy name, as Krishna mentions himself in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 11. Some people freak out and run away. I notice nowadays they're more apt to turn up the volume of their contraptions with the earplugs and walk as fast as they can past. That's in the minority. Most people look over. Some people think it's quaint. It reminds them of the 60s. Some people smile and seem to be captured as if it's a mysterious sound, and it is. In fact, sometimes people intuit this. Once in Canada, when I was distributing books, what's that place called? Toronto, the upscale, trendy. What's it called?
Kensington Market.
Yeah, Kensington Market. It's very upscale Canada, everybody's nice. Flowers bloom throughout all seasons, except during severe ice storms. And anyway, we were down there distributing books, and I met these two finely dressed African gentlemen, businessmen, and one of them was open-minded, and the other one was seemingly cautious. And at the end of my spiel, at the end of the spiel, it ends up somebody buying a book, which did in this case. One purchased a book, the other one remained cautious. And then I said, and now, do you believe in the power of prayer? To which they both replied in the affirmative. And then I said, I'll teach you a beautiful prayer. It's meant to wake up love for God within your heart. Are you ready?
Yeah.
I was asking them that. Just so that they, to make sure they didn't think about it too much. So I said, and one of them said yes. And I said, Hare Krishna. And the gentleman with the book was just about to say Hare Krishna. And the other one swept his hand in front of his colleague and said, don't do it. And I was fascinated. I said, why not? And he said, you don't know what's going to happen if you do that. And I thought, he's very wise. And there's a way in which we don't really know what's going to happen either. But when we go out and test it, we see for ourselves, because when we do the Harinam Sankirtan, we notice that some people, according to their position in life, their appreciating capacity, which Prabhupada mentions in the Adi Leela, every species of life has an appreciating capacity, and of course Krishna is willing to facilitate everyone. Bhavayat yesha satvena lokan vai lokabhavana lila bhataranurato devatirayandaradishu. Amazingly, the last verse in the first canto, second chapter of the Bhagavatam, verse 34, says that Krishna is so eager to make sure that everyone has an opportunity to reconnect with him, that he goes to all species of life. Prabhupada mentions there that it's practically inconceivable. But Krishna thinks like that. Let everyone, even in other species, have some kind of contact. Even Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, commenting in this vein, says, we're eager to preach even to the vegetable tribes. You can meditate on that sometime. The little tribes of vegetables. Anyway. So there's a way in which everyone has a capacity. And when we take the mantras and when we take books, it's literary kirtan. They get to carry it home, and the mantra goes on and on and on and on for generations, so that people may take advantage of it. Because writing is simply speech abstracted anyway. And when we see the result ourselves, that how people react to the mantra, how they come alive, it's in parallel. The parallel I'm making is that animals would be killed. And nowadays, asuryā nāma te lokā, andhena tamasāvṛtāḥ, tāḿs te pretyābhigacchanti yeke cātma-hano janāḥ. Śrī Īśopaniṣad says there's a process by which the soul is veritably killed by getting involved with the material nature. The mind, which is meant to think of Krishna, becomes Jaḍa, dead like stone. And they can't think of anything except for matter. And one thinks, oh, I'm also a dead stone. But when they come in contact with Hare Krishna, and when they come in contact with transcendental literature and the association of devotees, then we see that they come alive. And then our faith in the mantra grows. Because after a day of presenting the mantra to people and seeing that some come alive and also some are reversed, like our friend from Africa, he said, no, don't do it. I think if you're courageous, you think, okay, let me see what it does to me. I want to experiment and go down that spiritual rabbit hole and find out what is the big mysterious world of Krishna. Which even Rupa Goswami, he says, don't don't go down and see Krishna. don't chant the mantra. He'll never come back. You'll never recover from that one. So the various kinds of, the ways in which the Shastra, here we have Prahlad Maharaj saying in this very demonstrative way that I don't want to go off with these people who are interested only in their own enlightenment. Prayena deva munayak svavibhukti kama. Maunam charanti vijanena pararthanishta. They're taking these vows of silence. They go for, I won't mention any brands, but I just heard somebody going away for a retreat, 9 days, no talking, and so forth. But the devotees, he says, I don't want to be among those. I want to be in the most populated place so that I can give everyone an opportunity to take to Krishna consciousness. I'll make a few more remarks from the purport, and then we'll have some discussion if you're willing. Questions and answers. I'm just preparing you ahead of time to see if you have specific ways you want the conversation to go, and I'll leave time for that. A couple other thoughts are that there's a way in which the hierarchy of devotees is described in the Śrīmad Bhagavatam and elsewhere, in which those who are inclined to give mercy to others are considered the topmost. And therefore I'm framing this idea of preaching. I like the word preaching, actually. We've changed it to outreach. That's fine too. I don't like preachy. But preaching is not so bad. And so there's a way Krishna describes, these hierarchies. So one of the hierarchies is in the 11th canto of the Śrīmad Bhagavatam. Ishvare taradineshu balisheshu dursatsucha prema maitri popeksha yakaroti samadhyamaha. First I'm starting with the Madhyama Adhikari. The Madhyama Adhikari has a way of looking at the world in 4 categories. Or even if that person doesn't see the world in 4 categories, at least that person has the impetus or the inspiration to do good for others. Because, and I'll back up 1 second, to acharyam eva haraye pujam ya sharaye hete na tad bhakteshu cha anyeshu sabhakta prakrita smita. There is such a thing as a prakrita, or materialistic devotee, which is seemingly a contradiction in terms, and it's based on the generosity of pure devotees to invite everyone to come into the fold of Krishna consciousness. But then the implication is, if somebody doesn't know how to do good for others, or doesn't know how to respect devotees who are doing good for others, such a person is still at the starting gate of bhakti. So that what the verse says is that natad bhakteshu cha anyeshu means that a person who's doing bhakti but only sees Krishna in the temple, acharyam eva haraye pujam yashvaraye hite, and they're enthusiastic about that. But if, for instance, we were having a class on Śrīmad Bhagavatam and somebody came in, they would likely ring the bell really loud, walk through the crowd, not notice that there was anybody here, and go right to the front of the temple and not sit down to hear. And Anyeshu means they also don't see that Krishna is within everyone's heart. And that, as Prabhupada describes in his purports, every living being is a tabernacle. If you've ever been to an airport religious room, some places have a tabernacle, which is a little box in which some religious sects, they'll have the essence of the divine is in that box. And they were nomadic and they would carry it with them wherever they went. So there's a parallel. Prabhupada compares every body to be a tabernacle, because we're walking and there's soul inside, but there's also Krishna inside. And so one who doesn't recognize that Krishna is actually within the heart of every living being, that Krishna's real mission is to give an opportunity to those souls who were wayward in the material world to go back to Godhead, and then only worships Krishna in the temple, they're materialistic. And then comes the Madhyama Adhikari. Shall I describe the Madhyama Adhikari?
Yes.
I need a verbal yes.
Yes.
Okay. Do we have enough oxygen? There's only a few minutes to go, but do you have oxygen? Can you get more? So I see a few people look tired, or maybe it was... Okay. Ishvare taradineshu balisheshu dusatsucha prema maitri kipopeksha yakaroti samadhyamaha. The Madhyamadhikari is one who sees Krishna and offers and is developing love for Krishna. Taradineshu becomes friendly with those who are absorbed in devotional service. Balisheshu means Balis are the innocents in the world. Those whom, if you present Krishna consciousness, they come forward. They want to hear more. They want to become involved. They're the ones who, when you're having the Harinam, they become effulgent and like, I don't know what this is, but I like it. So we interviewed people up and down the avenue where we chant, and someone said, I have no idea what it is, but I really like it. Bali Sheshu Dusatsucha, and then there's those who are Dvisatsu, which means they don't like it at all. And for them, you're supposed to be Upeksha, which means don't bug them. In fact, that's the admonition for all those who would go out into the world and present Krishna consciousness. The way I conceive of it and the way I teach it is that there's a scale of 1 to 10. And if somebody's at a 5 or below, leave them alone. If they're a 5.1, maybe there's an opening. 5.2, you get up to 6 and they'll start chasing after you. And where do you live, by the way? Can I come and check out one of your things? With the speak of 7, 8, 9, 10. And we, according to this verse, are meant to observe people's willingness, their openness, their appreciating capacity, and then as much as possible give them an opportunity to take Krishna consciousness. And there are this hierarchy of people. Krishna also describes various other hierarchies. Chaturvida bhajante mam jana sukritino arjuna arto jignasa artarti jnani cha bharatarshava. That's 7th chapter of Bhagavad Gita, where he says there are 4 kinds of pious people. So among those who we meet who are a little bit open, there are various motives they may have. And we may notice them as we continue to preach Krishna consciousness. Some are interested in wealth, some are suffering and they want to get rid of the suffering, some are inquisitive, and some are in knowledge of the absolute truth. Krishna says, that the best one is the one who's in knowledge of the absolute truth. And then he describes, tell me if this is getting too detailed, but it's just in the idea of hierarchies. In the 9th chapter of the Bhagavad Gita, he says, Jnana yagnena chapyanye yajanto mamupasate pratakvena bahuto vishuto mukam. I blew the 3rd line. But the point is that he said, besides these other 4 people who are variously have a modicum of interest in Krishna consciousness, then there's another class, another set of 4 who have some God conception, but it's a little off or way off. So one is ekatvena, they think they're God and therefore they worship themselves, however you do that. Ekatvena, pratakvena, they see the demigods and they think, oh, all the demigods together, they're God. Bahuta vishuto mukam, and vishvato, they think the universe is God, as in, I asked the universe for a new car, and look what I got. So there are various ways in which Krishna describes the conditioning of people in the world, and then gives us this duty to go out and offer people an opportunity to take to Krishna consciousness. And our job is to observe carefully what position are they in, and to what degree can we offer them an opportunity to take to Krishna consciousness based on their appreciating capacity. And this final point, that is in parentheses, is that our Shastras consider those whose main purpose and prime way of worshipping Krishna is to give the living entities, according to their appreciating capacity, an opportunity to take to Krishna consciousness. This is the highest method of service. There's no higher method of service than this. Tapyante lokatapena sarva prayasojana parama aradanam taddi purusha sakilatmana. This is Shukadeva Goswami in the 8th chapter of 8th canto of Bhagavatam, observing how Lord Shiva drank the ocean of poison to save everybody. And they said, that's a Vaishnav. And he said, Tapyante, he took some trouble on himself to save others, and parama aradanam. He said there's no higher means of worshipping the Lord than taking some trouble on oneself to save others, to bring them to Krishna consciousness, that is, as Prahlad Maharaj is saying in this verse. And now I rest my case, and I will take, if you're willing, questions that are related and that expand the conversation in a good direction. Hope that's not too confining. Or just reflections. Anything you heard from the purport or for the monologue that you think is worthy to repeat. Prabhu. 1, 2. We'll take the mic. Just raise your hand. You'll get the mic in 7 seconds or less, or your money back from today's class. Be aggressive, Prabhu. Put your hand up. You were first.
Hare Krishna Maharaj. I really like the point that you just mentioned about preaching being a form of worship for us. And the question I had was, of course, you illustrated it well with the in this anecdote with the 2 African gentlemen. But what happens when we are trying to give love, unconditional love, in our opinion, to someone, but they do not want to accept it, or they feel that what we're giving is not really something they need or love. They do not reciprocate with our desire to share love.
They're on a scale of 1 to 10, where would you say they are on the spectrum? I shouldn't say spectrum. Where are they on the scale from 1 to 10?
Less than 5.
Okay, less than 5, leave them alone. I'm saving you a lot of time and trouble. You can thank me later. Okay, who's the next question?
Prabhupada was saying that we have to be fully convinced about nobody being happy without Krishna consciousness, and I wanted to know what fully convinced, or how to become fully convinced.
Somebody look up the word convinced really quick. We'll get the etymology of it. Convinced. Does anybody off their top of their head know what it means before we got our research department's data back? Did you get it? You got it. Go ahead. Ranchor's got it over here. Okay. You can look on Etymoline also online.
Certainly convinced about something. Origin Latin, from the mid-16th century. With con means with, and vincere means conquer. Convinced.
Conquered?
Conquer.
There you have it.
Overcome defeat.
Overcome or defeat. Overcome, comma, defeat. Right? Convince. So there's a way in which Krishna mentions throughout the Bhagavad Gita that one may overcome doubts. For instance, he says, tamasāvṛtāḥ kālishu mamanusmara yujyata mayarpita mano burir mami Vaiśeṣika samśayah. He's giving a description of how one should prepare for the end of life and be able to remember Krishna. And he says, therefore, you should practice. Tamasāvṛtāḥ kālishu, at all times, in all places, circumstances. Mam anusmara yujyata means, first remember me, then fight, or do your work. Mayarpita mano mami Vaiśeṣika samśayah. And therefore, without a doubt, he said, if you practice this, which he recommends in the next verse, in which he says, what's the next verse? What's the word for practice? Abhyasa yoga yuktena cetasa nānyagāmina paramam purusham divyam yati partanu chintayan. He said, practice this, thinking of me. And when we're able to practice Krishna consciousness, the simple path, but practice it strictly, there's a way in which our doubts are dissipated just the way fog is dissipated by the sunshine. And when we have our own experience that Krishna is there, and we can hear that the holy name is not like any other vibration we've ever heard. And we have a sense in which Krishna is reinforcing that from within our heart, tesham satata yuktanam, etc. Then we become free from doubt and extremely potent. This comes from, in a very practical way, we have to study all of Prabhupada's books. Just considering the various kinds of doubts people may have. For instance, somebody might doubt the efficacy of Prabhupada's books. Generally that's because they're not reading them, they're cherry-picking a few points and saying, oh, what if somebody reads that or this? But if you read all of the books, you'll see that there's nothing like them. They're a sound vibration unlike any other. And that's why so many people have read them and become Krishna conscious. And when we're able to discuss the points that trouble us, Siddhanta bole chitanakara alashiha hoite Krishna loki sudrid manash, says Kaviraj Goswami in the Adi Lila of Chaitanya Charitamrita. He said, don't be lazy. He says, discuss these controversial points until you come to a clear idea of why it seems controversial to some people and how to adjust it so that you can present it to others. And then when we become very clear, as also mentioned in Bhagavatam, Tradhatana munayo jnana vairagya yuktaya pashyantyatmani cātma-hano bhakti shruta grihitaya. This is also Sutta Goswami says, you have to have this fortification by hearing the Srimad Bhagavatam and the Bhagavad Gita at least. Otherwise, you won't be able to stay steady on the path of devotional service. Tradhatana munayo, you have to have this really clear idea that this is the ultimate, as is being presented here in the purport. And not that, oh, maybe people have other ideas. Like when you do meetup.com, anybody? Meetup.com? Somebody mentioned it yesterday. Lots of people come and they go around the circuit and they try out all the spiritual stuff. And Krishna is a thing. But to those who have read deeply and associated, Krishna is the thing. There is no a thing on Krishna. So that's the process, to hear in the association of advanced devotees and to chant. Practice chanting so that one can hear the vibration of the Hare Krishna mantra and recognize at least there's nothing else that sounds like this anywhere in the universe. That's the beginning of our entry into devotional service without any doubt. Okay, Prabhupada Priya, and then, yes, Prabhu, please. Priya, do you have a microphone?
What's the relationship between trying to introduce Krishna to others and becoming convinced ourselves?
Well, I've found that when neophytes go out on book distribution, neophytes means even new people, that oftentimes they have such a exhilarating experience that they become convinced. I'll tell you something really wild. You want to hear something wild?
Yes.
Oh, you don't, eh? Yes. No, this is really wild. Do you want to hear it or not? Yes. All right. So here's what we used to do. We've always thought of our community as an experimental, a proving ground. We'll try anything to see what might work. And once when we had this little old temple that I said, we're not going to live there. And they said, we have to. We got kicked out everywhere else. And then we moved in and lived there for 7 years. And somehow or other, we were happy. And we used to, for our Sunday program, I warned you, it's a little wild. For our Sunday program, the first half of the Sunday program was a talk about how it feels to go out in the world and give people the best thing. And the second part of the Sunday program was inviting everybody in the audience to walk outside where there were devotees waiting with clipboards and be assigned to a car where we told them we would take them to a neighborhood where they could go door to door and distribute books, and they'd be back in time for prasadam. And half the room would clear out, and we'd tell everyone else who stayed back to pray for those who went out. And the ones who went out, one night, although there are many stories, I'll give you this one. We'd have them come back, and they'd make it back from announcements. We'd pass the microphone around and ask them, what was it like to go out into the great unknown and offer Bhagavad Gita to people by knocking on their doors on a Sunday evening? And one person came and he said, well, I'm just a guest here. I was bored, and my friend said, why don't you come to the Hare Krishna temple with me? He said, and I'm an atheist. He said, but I sold the Bhagavad Gita. And there was also, when we first started our Sankirtan party, there were 3 women who are now highly advanced devotees. I mean, they're on the top level, as far as I'm concerned, of devotional service. And I remember the day we came back from our first outing, and they were sitting there and they were discussing, 3 of them, and they said, we should start a little club to read these books. Because they hadn't yet, and they went out their first time and distributing. They got fascinated by what they were distributing and the reaction that people were having, and the envelopment of the spiritual energy by going out. So they said, let us start reading these books to see, and they started a little club, which is going on to this day. And they've advanced greatly. So Srila Bhaktisiddhanta Saraswati Thakur, when he created his logo for the Gaudiya Math, had put a printing press on it, which was from Cleveland, Ohio, by the way. Anybody Cleveland? Nobody? Haribol, let's hear it for Cleveland. That's where the printing presses came from. And he put above it, on the logo, Rag Marg, the preaching, the going out, that spontaneity. You're not going to find anything more spontaneous and practical at the same time, walking out the door and going meeting complete strangers door to door. And you're never going to chant Hare Krishna so sincerely as when you knock and then you're going, what do I do now? Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna. And that's the relationship, Kalakanta Prabhu. Okay, Prabhupada Priya. Okay, go ahead. They're dominating back there. Go ahead. Prabhupada Priya, and then we'll take Anuttama Prabhu for the slam dunk close. Because he's cooking something up back there. Go ahead, Prabhupada Priya.
Hare Krishna, thank you, Prabhu. I was just reflecting on Prahlad Maharaj's compassion in this verse, and it's feeling like if we have a lot of compassion, then we'll be compelled to go out. But sometimes our compassion is a little lacking, and we just kind of see people out there and think, oh, they're doing their thing, I'm doing my thing, whatever. So in the absence of true, deep compassion for the fallen conditioned souls, then how does one overcome the mental platform and the social awkwardness and the fear of getting out there?
Go out in a group. Go with others. Recently, we were in Denver, Colorado, the mighty ISKCON of Denver. Hare Krishna. And we went door to door in an apartment complex that I wouldn't even stay overnight in. And it was scary walking around. But we were with a big group, and some of them I could tell were nervous, but because we were with the group, we just fearlessly went together as a horde and enveloped the apartment complex, and so many wonderful things happened, and we all did it together, hand in hand, so we were carried along. So I always recommend going in a group. I'm running short, so I'm keeping really short answers, relatively short. Go ahead.
In the purport, Prabhupada mentions devotees are always happy. And elsewhere he says devotees have no material desires. And elsewhere he describes so many things. So sometimes when we read that, we think, well, I'm a devotee, I'm trying to be a devotee. I must be happy. I must not have material desires. And sometimes it leads us to maybe artificially act on a level we're not on. Or sometimes, in the extreme even, people have psychological, Ravinda Suruprabhu did a whole study on that, psychological problems because we fake that we're at a higher level. Sometimes it causes us to kind of like cover up things. And I would say from a communications perspective, the worst part, we don't open ourselves up for feedback or critique because we don't want to commit offense, or we think we should create an environment. You know, these are all leaders who we create an environment which is we're all on such an elevated level. Don't question me, I don't question others, etc. Your reflections on that.
Yet another reason why one should go out into the great unknown. It's the great, also, besides being the great unknown, it's a great equalizer. Because when you knock on a door, people don't care if you did your Bhakti Shastri. They don't care if you got a position somewhere in the hierarchy. All they know is there's a guy outside. And they either want or don't want. And just when we were in Denver, we had a doctor with us. What's his name? Our doctor. Nitai Prabhu. A consummate gentleman and highly educated doctor. And we were all together in a group. He knocked on one door and they opened the door, looked at him. I mean, who would look at Nitai? Most people would melt because he looks like Satfagun. But somebody opened the door and they saw him and they just slammed the door in his face. And I said, you're so lucky that just happened. I said, I'll bet as a doctor you've never had that happen before. Everyone's always going like, okay, yes, Dr. G, come in, you know, you're so great. And he said, yeah, that was a wonderful experience. So going out to preach Krishna consciousness, it automatically sands us down. All the rough edges where I think I'm so great and so forth, everyone out in the public, they respond to that in a way that we become smooth over time, just like rocks in that tumbler my father used to have. You take a rough rock, you can't tell what's in it. But so many times I've been told, when I was young and going out on book distribution, if I had a rupee for every time somebody told me, why don't you go get a job, I'd be a crorepati right now. And what to speak of. Anyway, I won't get into all the war stories, but the fact is, going out into the great unknown and the joys of meeting people who are open because they're appreciating capacity and seeing that we have just what they were looking for, and then we realize that's just what I was looking for, and vicariously we again and again experience what we experienced the first time we heard Hare Krishna, or we got a book and we said, this is it, I found it, ta-da, Rajas Tamo Bhava. And there's a way that preaching is good for everyone, preaching is good for our movement, and it just so happens, last statement, that it is considered to be the topmost of all activities. And when our mission is based on that, we can hardly go wrong by managing the results of preaching. That's the real way to get involved in making flowcharts and so forth, so figure out what to do with all the devotees we've made. So thank you very much, everyone, for all you're doing around the world. You're the great heroes of the planet, and I feel greatly privileged to have your association. Dear Srila Prabhupada, dear Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, Shri Shri Panchatattva, Shri Shri Gauranitai, Shri Shri Radha Vrinādvan Chandra, Shri Gopal Ji, if you so desire, please empower our team so that we may have compassion in our hearts and fearlessness to go out into the world and give everyone the opportunity to take this beautiful process of Krishna consciousness for themselves. Please let us do great damage to the Kali Yuga on behalf of Srila Prabhupada and the great acharyas. Thank you for considering our request. Om Tat Sat. Everyone who agrees with this prayer, in whole or in part, please unmute and say Hare Krishna.